My son's hands pressed between my shoulder blades at the cliff's lip, and as the sky flipped, my husband breathed, "Pretend we're dead." I froze my body and steadied my mind the way a mother who's lived a lifetime steadies hot coffee in a moving car. When help came, I did what years of quiet sacrifice taught me. I wrote everything down, asked names, saved messages, paper and light to hold the truth. That moment on the rock was only the first crack. What followed would test every boundary of love, loyalty, and the law. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I have learned that survival sometimes begins with stillness, the way Avery once leaned close on a night I won't forget and whispered, "Don't react, breathe." So I breathed even on Sundays that looked harmless. Our ranch house in Loveland smelled like pot roast and coffee, and the radio mumbled baseball hope from the counter. Sunlight slid over the oak table Avery built when our boys were little, touching knife marks from long ago birthdays. If happiness can hide a bruise, it hides best in a kitchen. A knock skimmed the screen. Bunt Pan Rescue Darlie sang from the porch, cheeks flushed by the wind. I welcomed her in, handed over the pan that had seen more church socials than any of us. We swapped neighbor talk, trash pickup, the fickle forecast, choir practice. People behave better with a witness in the doorway, their shoulders square. Their words rehearse themselves. The back door clicked. Joran breezed in with a grocery bag he didn't need to carry. Carla floated behind him, wiping a spotless counter with a paper towel like she was managing a clinic. "We'll handle it," they echoed, bright as labels. No need to fuss. Joran stacked the mail with form and flair. Carla arranged knives by length, then moved them again. I poured tea. 30 years teaching taught me that quiet isn't surrender, it's surveillance. I let their repeated phrases do the talking for them. Streamlining helps everyone. Joran said, fanning envelopes like playing cards. "I'll sort the bills." "Mom, we're simplifying." Carla added voice, warm enough for Darlie to hear. "Systems make life safer at your age." My thumb found my wedding ring and turned it once, twice, 3 times, an old metronome that steadies me. "We can discuss what needs doing," I said. The pot roast hissed in the oven like a soft descent. Carla gave a sunny shrug and launched the line like handing me dessert. "Why don't we just sign power of attorney today? Keep things simple if anything you know happens." She smiled at Darlie, looping a neighbor into a family moment that wasn't hers to hold. Joran nodded as if we'd all agreed last Tuesday. I set the tea down without a clink. "I'll read before I sign anything." I kept it even the librarian cadence that says yes to respect and no to hurry. Darlie's eyebrows made a tiny arch. The slight had landed where it was meant to be seen. Of course, Carla laughed half a beat too quick. "We only want to help. It's complicated at your age." Her towel drifted toward the hallway. "Didn't you say the tax slips are in the safe?" Avery stalled with a throat clear. Close by, he said, gentle as always. The 4 of us drifted down the short corridor. The safe sat where it always sat, dutiful as a dog against the wall. Carla stepped ahead and tapped 4 numbers without looking. The door sighed open like a cookie tin. Inside the life insurance envelope lay face up, and a folder I keep buried had walked to the front row. Avery's eyes flinched. He smoothed it with a smile. I didn't smooth anything. I watched hands' angles comfort. Power isn't loud, it's familiar. See, Joran said, plucking papers, performing competence. We're on top of it. "Close it, please," I said the way I once told second graders walk. He closed it too fast. Carla's fingers lingered on the keypad like it belonged to her pulse. We returned to the kitchen where the roast forgave everything, grace was said. While the gravy cooled its temper, Joran tried out his. "Auto pay would end your stress, Mom. We'll handle it." Carla nodded toward Darlie Bunt Pan, cradled like proof of helpfulness. "It's all about keeping them protected." I changed the subject to the grandchildren's science fair. We were a family again for 3 honest minutes, poster board volcanoes, the smell of glue timetables that didn't include my name on a dotted line. When the lull came back, nobody noticed the small black notebook I slipped from the drawer. After dishes, I stepped into the office. I wrote what mattered, date time, who stood where, exact phrases. Witness, present, Darley. Line sign, power of attorney to keep things simple, complicated, at your age safe. Opened by Carla without request. I set the notebook beside the safe, not in it. Evidence should be visible sometimes. It changes how people move. Carla's reflection found me in the glass. Everything in order, she asked, syrup cooling. Enough to keep score, I said, not unkind. I let her see the notebook on purpose. Her smile dimmed a shade. Back in the kitchen, Joran stacked mail by his own rules. "We'll streamline these, Mom," he said, palming the top bill. "I'll read before I agree," I replied. Weather quiet, firm as a fence post. They rose to go with air kisses and calendar promises. At the corridor, Carla reached for the safe again. Casual as breath. "I'll just grab those slips. They'll be here when we need them," I said, placing myself between her and the door. Not a wall, just a door frame that suddenly had an owner. Surprise flickered across her face, then a practiced smile returned. "We'll circle back," she said. When the door closed behind them, the house exhaled. I wiped the table, though it didn't need wiping, an old habit that resets the room. In the office doorway, I positioned the notebook where the morning light would touch it. My ring turned once more a private gavel. If they wanted a story, I would keep the record. Avery lingered at the sink, drying the same plate twice. "You okay, Maura?" he asked, eyes on the dish. "I am," I said, "and we're not in a hurry." The radio murmured a scoreless inning. Outside, the wind combed the cottonwoods the same as every other year we've lived here. Routine is where people hide plans. Routine is also where you plant boundaries. The phone on the desk buzzed. I let it buzz. Sundays used to be gentle. They can be again, I told myself, if I keep my ledger and my pace. Quiet isn't weakness. Quiet is the ground under your feet when someone else starts moving furniture. I turned off the oven, checked the lock, and stood a moment in the corridor between kitchen and office, between memory and proof. The safe looked like what it was metal numbers promise. The notebook looked like what it would become, a spine. The draft came like a stone dropped into calm water. No noise, just ripples that wouldn't stop. I was at the kitchen table when my email pinged. Subject line, Revocable Living Trust Consolidation for Q4. Across the top of the attachment, faint but firm, the watermark read, Draft. I printed it, the paper still warm when I started marking with my pen. Words like successor trustee and funding schedule were circled, underlined, starred. Every phrase that shifted control away from me drew another mark. When I reached pour over, my stomach sank. I texted Avery, "We'll read together. No signatures today." By mid-morning, we were seated in the muted calm of Adnan's estate planning office. Leather chairs, diplomas on the wall, the faint smell of coffee lingering in the lobby. Adnan rose from behind his desk, smile polite, but tired. A minute later, Joran and Carla slipped in, as if by coincidence. Too neat to be an accident. "We're just here to help keep things moving," Carla chirped. Adnan walked us through the structured trust, purpose beneficiaries, trustee powers, what counted as incapacity. His tone was neutral, but my pen scratched steadily across the page. Notes mattered. Witnesses matter, even if they exist only in memory. He spoke of convenience and avoiding probate words like polished stones. Carla leaned forward, her voice silky. "We'll handle the logistics for Mom," Joran added. "At your age, speed helps." I let them finish. Then I asked, Adnan calm, and even to email a copy only to me, not to any shared account. Adnan glanced up, paused, then nodded. My line had been drawn, my record not theirs. The key pages revealed themselves like cracks in plaster. Provisional beneficiaries trending toward Joran and Carla. Funding instructions that would pull our house and savings into the trust, tilting authority their way under successor trustee. I asked Adnan about capacity triggers. He answered in measured tones, 2 medical certifications, 1 primary, 1 specialist. It was all written down. "We will review this draft and seek independent advice," I said. "Procedure, not protest." Adnan nodded again, the professional bow to a client who knew her rights. Outside in the parking lot, the Colorado sun was sharp. Carla's voice was sharper. If you sign Friday, we can lock better rates before the quarter. Joran folded his arms, nodding. It's all for your comfort. My reply was steady. Comfort begins with time to think. I snapped a photo of the draft's cover page, today's date visible in the corner. Their smiles faltered for just a second. That night, the kitchen carried the smell of dish soap and damp towels. I filed the hard copy in the drawer, slid my ledger beside it, and began my parallel note date. Time attendees phrases, exactly as they happened. Arrows on the page connected successor trustee to access to accounts. Control mapped itself if you were willing to see it. Avery rinsed dishes at the sink's shoulders, rounded in that way I knew too well, silence pressing down, something unsaid trying to break loose. He didn't look up when he spoke. I kept the wrong sun from falling. The words landed heavier than oak. Not about the cliff, not yet. About something older, something buried. I didn't ask questions, not tonight. I wrote the sentence verbatim in my ledger. The draft sat on the table, edges curling under the lamplight. I stuck a yellow note to the front page, independent counsel, capacity standards, no shared email. My ring turned once. The kitchen clock ticked steady witness and metronome. Some truths hide in paperwork. Others slip out in a single line and they change everything. The draft of the trust lay on the kitchen table overnight, yellow sticky notes clinging to its edges like warning flags. By morning, I thought I'd wake to calm, but instead, my inbox had another surprise waiting. The subject line was dressed up with emojis, anniversary hike packing list. I almost smiled at how cheery it looked, but the details beneath the confetti made my stomach clench. Rope harness flare first aid. Those weren't supplies for a gentle stroll on the canyon loop. I copied the entire list into my notebook, dated it, and circled the words that didn't belong. Avery glanced over my shoulder, his brow furrowing. That's not for an easy trail, he muttered, but neither of us said more. I knew better than to delete or ignore. I forwarded the email not to the family thread where it started, but through a quiet filter I'd created the night before. Any subject line containing Trust POA Insurance Bank or Now Itinerary was automatically copied to Janelle's private address. She responded with one word, "Got it." And that was enough. We didn't need to discuss motives, only the mechanics of survival. After printing the message, I placed the hard copy in a drawer separate from the safe. A small sticky note read, "Kid Trail, Pro Gear, Inconsistency. Evidence doesn't argue, it just waits." Avery, with his carpenter's eye, circled the word, "flare." "Signal devices imply remoteness," he said. His voice was flat, but I wrote it down anyway, initials and timestamp included. Our children had no idea that every suggestion they made was now a record I intended to keep. Then another message buzzed in. Carla so casually, "Mom, your BP pill dose should be higher, so you won't feel winded. Just take one more before the hike." I didn't answer her. I called the nurse line instead. A woman with a steady Midwestern accent confirmed what I suspected: do not change dose without physician review. Extra tablets can cause dizziness, even fainting. She gave me her employee ID and I wrote it down with the time. Only after that did I text Carla back, "Thanks for caring. I'll keep my prescribed dose and bring water." Polite, not pliant. I saved the thread as a PDF in the same cloud folder as the itinerary. At the oak table, I laid out our actual day pack items: water bottles, snacks, jackets, a small first aid kit. I took a time-stamped photo and sent it to Janelle with the caption, "This is what we'll actually carry." That evening at the kitchen sink, Avery and I rinsed dishes like we had for decades. Without saying the words directly, we made a pact. We'd stay on main trails, never linger near edges, and if pressured, we'd ask a stranger to take our photo witnesses, even in leisure. I added my own private rule: when in doubt, write it down. Before bed, I pinned the printed itinerary on the corkboard by the back door. The paper fluttered slightly as a breeze came through the screen like a finger pointing west. My ring turned once more on my finger, a quiet reminder: preparation is not paranoia. The morning after I pinned the itinerary to the corkboard, I was still sipping coffee when my phone rang. It was Darlie, my neighbor across the street. Her voice carried a hesitation that made me set my mug down mid-sip. "Amora," she said, "I think my dashcam caught something last night. Can you come over?" I walked across the street, the sun already warming the sidewalk. On her porch, the scent of fresh cinnamon rolls drifted out, but her expression was uneasy. Inside, we settled in front of her widescreen TV. She queued up the footage. The grainy glow of her SUV's headlights framed my own driveway. There was Duran, my son, pulling rope tight against our hitch, his movements deliberate. Carla stood beside him with her phone's flashlight angled, counting something out with her fingers. I didn't speak. Instead, I leaned in, studying the timestamp in the corner of the screen, noting her vehicle's license plate reflected faintly in the frame. My heart sank, but my mind stayed methodical. I asked Darlie to pause rewind and pause again. We exported the clip to a USB drive labeled only with the date. I sent myself a cloud copy under a neutral file name, blind copying Janelle, so she would have it too. Before I left, I wrote in my ledger who was present, what was said, the exact time. Witnesses mattered. Back home, Avery was in the garage. I showed him the clip without commentary. He crouched down by the scuff marks on our concrete driveway, tracing them with his calloused fingers. "These aren't from the tires," he muttered. He demonstrated how the rope had been tied, how the angle against the hitch mimicked an anchor point. His carpenter's hands saw patterns most would overlook. I photographed the marks with a ruler for scale and added them to the file. Quietly, evidence was building. That afternoon, we drove to the High Plains Credit Union. Bernard, the officer there, recognized us and waved us into his office. I spoke calmly. "We want alerts on everything. Fraud flags, daily balance emails, SMS for transfers over 500, and we need verbal password challenges on all accounts." Bernard nodded understanding without prying. He ran a test, a $1 transfer that pinged my phone within seconds. I logged the timestamp, the success of the ping, and Bernard's ID number. We also added Janelle's phone as a secondary for statement, changes only, scope limited, precise. By supper, Duran and Carla joined us at the dining room table. Roast chicken sat steaming in the middle, but the room felt colder than usual. Duran praised our responsibility, his tone rehearsed. Carla smiled and said, "This streamlines things for your comfort, Mom." I didn't flinch. Instead, I asked where the trailhead parking was, how far the bathrooms were. Mundane questions, pinning them down to specifics, all while their plates clinked softly against the oak table. That night, I organized everything into a new binder. One tab for the dashcam clip, one for the bank alert settings, one for the itinerary inconsistencies. Bernard's card slid into a sleeve alongside the printed confirmation numbers. I emailed myself a summary with the subject line, Household Settings Review. When I finally closed the drawer, the lock clicked once, sharp and certain. Outside, the driveway looked ordinary again, still and harmless under the porch light. Ordinary enough to fool a stranger, but not me. The night after I locked the binder, I slept lightly the way you do when you've set an early alarm. Morning came clean and blue. I packed water, snacks, jackets, and our usual day pack, nothing more. Avery checked the tire pressure and the weather radio. We didn't say the word trust or the word cliff. We just moved like people who still believe in Sunday walks, even on a Friday. The drive to Laurie State Park traced the reservoir's edge. Cottonwoods flashed their leaves in the crosswind. We pulled into the main lot, and I read the stall number aloud so I would remember it later. Carla hopped out fast bright as a tour guide and lifted her phone toward the trail map kiosk. "Stand here," she said, and framed Avery and me beside the icon for the overlook, for memories. Duran laughed easy. I smiled. Inside the ranger station, the air smelled of dust and sunscreen. A young woman in a green shirt looked up with a smile that reached both eyes. "Morning, I'm Kelsey." She tapped the conditions board. "Gusty today. Edges are unstable near overlooks. Scree on the approach. Stick to the main loop if you want the view without the risk." I repeated her name, Kelsey, and thanked her. Behind her, a small red camera light glowed by the door. She drew a circle on the park map pen. steady. This loop is best signed. The old spur to the panoramic lookout isn't maintained, and with this wind, I wouldn't recommend it. Carla leaned in. Is the panoramic one still open? Kelsey pointed toward a laminated warning placard. Caution, unstable edge. I took a photo of the board and the clock above it. Time stamped the warning. Witnesses aren't only people. We stepped back into the sun. As the door swung behind us, the entry camera sat in the corner like a small eye. Carla lifted her arm, casual as a greeting, and gestured toward the hazardous direction. Best angles, she laughed. Joran nodded, hands tucked in his jacket. I felt a prickle at the base of my neck, the way you do when a storm is still an hour out, but the birds go quiet. The path out of the lot was kind at first. Packed gravel families with strollers, dogs who thought this was all for them. I set a pace I could sustain, heel to ball, steady breath, counting by tens. Avery fell in beside me, measuring his breath to mine. Carla walked ahead, narrating the day like a travel host. Joran drifted behind, then ahead, then behind again, as if bracketing us without touching. At the first fork, the wind tugged at our hats. A faded arrow pointed left along the loop Kelsey had circled. To the right, a narrower track slipped between scrub oak and juniper. A half-peeled sticker clung to the post where some warning had been. This way's a touch shorter to a view Carla chirped kindness wrapped around command. Less tiring for you two, I said evenly. The ranger said main loop. Joran chuckled. We'll be careful. The word careful, I've learned, can mean anything. Within 100 yards, the surface shifted from compact dirt to loose stone. It rolled underfoot like dry beans in a jar. The grade tilted just enough to make ankles whisper. The wind funneled up a draw and pressed against my jacket, not hard but insistent. I paused at a flat patch to drink and suggested we rejoin the loop after one photo. It's right there, Carla said, pointing with enthusiasm big enough to hide impatience. Shrubs thinned, trees stepped back. The sky widened in a way that told you the land didn't want rails. I could see the valley quilt squares of pasture and water through a gap where the rocks slanted toward a lip. One photo, then we head back, I said, on my count. Avery glanced at me, then at the lip, and gave one slow nod. Carla stepped sideways to frame us with the view feet light on the slant. She lifted her phone and tested angles the way she had in our kitchen when she wanted a signature, the way she had in the driveway when ropes were practice and not yet confession. Joran hovered close behind us, too close to be accidental, far enough to be deniable. I named the details in my head the way people say, Grace wind from the west scree underfoot lip 4 steps ahead, sun at my back, daughter-in-law, at the lens. Carla laughed lightly as if the wind were the punchline. She lifted the phone higher. Hold still, she said, and the words slid over the rock like oil. Avery's hand found my elbow a touch that meant both love and brace. I wasn't afraid. Fear scatters. I was alert. Alert collects. We moved one step closer to where the view opens and the ground pretends to be solid. The breeze tugged at the brim of my hat. I took it off and looped it through my jacket so both hands were free. Count with me, I said to Avery, keeping my voice level enough to carry but not provoke. He exhaled, ready. From the corner of my eye, I caught the smallest thing, Joran's shoes, angled not parallel to ours, but slightly inward, as if to guide, as if to corral. A shepherding posture, gentle in every way, except intention. Carla's thumb hovered over the screen as if she were summoning the moment, not recording it. Somewhere behind us, a gull cried once, or maybe just my memories hinge. On my count, I repeated and raised my palm to stop Avery one step shy of the slant. Carla smiled into the glass and began to count on her own, bright and quick, the way people count down to fireworks. 3, 2. I stood very still and watched my son's shadow lift a half inch, then lean. The wind waited too. Carla's voice was bright as a birthday candle, and the wind held its breath with me. I had said my rule out loud. We stepped back only on my count, and I meant it. But rules don't bind people who never agreed to them. I felt the lightest brush at first, like someone dusting lint from a sweater. Then a hand flattened between my shoulder blades and pressed forward, not steadying, not kind, decisive. My heel slid. Scree rolled like marbles under a school chair. The air became enormous and thin. I flung my left arm wide for balance and felt Avery move at the same instant, his carpenter's grip snapping shut on a wrist that wasn't mine. "If we're going," he growled quiet as sawdust, "you're coming." 4 bodies hit the same bad geometry. Us pitched forward them, yanked off their safe stance by shock and muscle memory. For a suspended blink, we were a crooked mobile over the valley. Carla's breath, catching Joranne's shoes, scraping gravel, ticking into the gorge, one bright pebble at a time. The rock lip shuddered beneath us with the weight of what people choose and what they pretend. Then the world tipped. Falling is shorter than stories make it. Noise dilates, thought becomes a list. I counted without meaning to 1 for the gasp, 2 for the empty 3, for the first bounce of my hip against a ledge, 4 for the slam that drove the air out of me and put a hard white line through my vision. My right forearm met rock and fireworks went off under the skin. My ribs announced themselves like old floorboards. My cheek found grit. Somewhere behind me, Avery exhaled a sound I knew from Winters and splinters the sound that comes right before he says, "Hold on." I tried to breathe and my chest answered in short, high sips. Pain organized itself sharp in the arm, blunt at the knee, a steady drum under the left ribs, a stinging stripe along my face. My hat tugged at its loop on my jacket. The sky was too bright. "Don't move," Avery rasped. His mouth was so close to my ear I could feel the words more than hear them. "Pretend we're dead." I let my eyes tilt to half-lidded, that sleepy glaze older people get in waiting rooms. I fixed them on a white seam of quartz in a dark slab 3 feet from my nose. My tongue stayed still. I let my chest rise only as high as a quiet sigh, and then lower, like a leaf falling in a hallway. Every impulse to flinch, to wipe grit, to clutch my ribs, I set down like a dish in a cabinet later. Above us, footsteps scrambled on loose stone. Carla made a sound between a sob and a swallow. Joranne cursed low and hot. Something metal clinked twice, phone case, belt buckle, carabiner. I stored the sound in the same place I keep birthdays and stall numbers. "They're gone," Joranne said too quickly. "Oh my God." The words were shaped for panic, but eagerness ran along the edges. Carla's voice trembled. He slipped. She reached. We tried. She cut herself off with a sharp breath, then repeated smoother like a practiced line. "Kid trail. Freak wind." "Stay with that," Joranne said, and gravel shifted as if he were turning toward the path. "You called it. I'll find a signal." He rehearsed while thinking I couldn't hear. They wanted the overlook. We said main loop. I warned about the gust. I grabbed Dad. "You filmed?" "No, delete the last one. Keep the map shot. And you're hurt. You should sit and make it look like you tried to get down." Avery didn't squeeze my hand. He didn't dare. But I felt his breath count with mine, a low metronome between stones. I kept my eyes on the quartz seam and let silence coat me like dust. They shifted above us for a long minute, whispering logistics into the wind. Panic not. Details Joranne coached the way people coach themselves through lies. If the ranger asks, say you begged them to turn back. If photos come up, we can say you weren't recording when it happened. Carla sniffed and said almost inaudibly, "My leg," then louder, "My leg." The word bounced off the walls and fell back dull. I listened for the important things, the direction they moved, the grind of gravel getting fainter, the angle of the sun warming the rock at my cheek. Somewhere a hawk carved a slow figure 8. Somewhere my phone rested in dust, maybe alive, maybe not. The quartz seam held still. I measured the wind in my hairline and filed the measurement. When the scuffing sounds grew thin, I allowed the smallest test, moved the big toe inside my shoe, counted 3 heartbeats, stopped. The toe answered me. My spine protested. Breath, I whispered a ghost of a word. Short Avery breathed. Phone recording. Maybe smashed. His voice frayed at the edges and then steadied itself the way you sand an end grain until it remembers it's wood. We move when they're gone. Gone, I said, or maybe only thought it. We need their words more than we need our pride. Above stones slid again, farther now, as if they were feeling for the slope that led to the main path. Joranne's footsteps got rhythmic, purposeful, a man going to fetch help in a story he wrote for himself. Carla's steps were smaller, halting as if she were dropping crumbs of pain for an audience she hadn't found yet. We lay still, and the minutes widened. My body's alarms argued with the part of me that knows catalogs and ledgers and what a witness is. I named the angle of the sun like a street 2 fingers past high no cloud cover. I named the landmark at my left a juniper clutching at the rock with roots like veins. I named the smell mineral in sage clean but edged. If I forgot my own name for a second, I could pick it back up later with these. Avery's fingers brushed mine once, as if checking for heat. I wanted to weep from the relief of that small census of life. Instead, I let it register and pass. Pain is loud, so is love. Evidence asks for quiet. At last, the trickle of stones ceased. Wind reclaimed the slope, making a dry whisper under everything else. I counted to 60 slow church clock. Slow, not microwave slow. No voices, no clinks. The hawk drew another loop and slipped north. Still, Avery breathed. Still, I answered the word no larger than a thread. We waited longer until my body's trembling settled into a manageable tremor. When I finally moved my eyes, I moved only them, no neck marking the ledge above the angle of the drop, the line we must have tumbled. I pictured the ranger station door camera and Kelsey's name tag, the placard that said, "Unstable Edge." I pictured Carla's raised hand pointing at danger like it was a postcard. If the world wanted a story, I would give it one with times and angles and names. In my periphery, a glint, a rectangle face down, half dusted, not 5 feet from my left hand. I didn't reach. Not yet. I measured the space between us in pain and in risk and in hope. My ribs ticked the seconds. My forearm throbbed its own alphabet. Above the sky was pitiless and enormous and blue enough to be kind. "We hold," I whispered. "One more minute." We did. And when the gravel stopped speaking and the wind became the only witness again, I knew we had stayed alive long enough for truth to start working. The first voice from above wasn't family. A clean practice shout slid down the rock. "2 patients below. Can you hear me?" I answered with the fewest words my ribs allowed. "Can breathe. 2 injuries." Avery added, "Stable. Enough." I told the rescuer where the sun sat, where the wind had shifted, and that a white quartz line marked our landing. Facts first, feelings later. Ropes and purpose arrived in a clatter. A helmeted woman leaned over the lip. "I'm led, Kelsey." A collar steadied my neck. A vacuum splint hugged my forearm. They asked for pain numbers. I gave numbers and times last meds at breakfast fall about 40 minutes ago. No loss of consciousness. Up on the ridge, Joranne and Carla paced and repeated the word wind like it could do paperwork. They lifted Avery first, then me. Sky rotor medal. The flight medic called vitals like a metronome and logged the time I gave. "If you find my phone," I said, "please bag it with my ID." He nodded. The helicopter beat us toward Fort Collins. UC Health looked like safety because it looked like routine. In triage, Dr. Shore ordered CT X-rays labs. Nurse Inez found a vein with quiet skill. I told her family might try to stand close and speak for us. I did not explain why. She tucked that fact away the way nurses keep important things visible to them, invisible to everyone else. Through the curtain gap, I watched Carla on a call. Hand-to-chest voice pitched for sympathy. Freak wind. They slipped. We tried to help. Joranne signed the visitor log with a tremor he could turn off like a switch. I counted their sentences against the ledger I carry in my head. My effects came in a clear bag. Inside, my phone shivered once. Inez looked to me. I nodded. Across the lock screen, the alert we had set glowed High Plains Credit Union transfer attempt over our threshold at 1942. She matched it to the wall clock, asked for permission, and photographed the screen for the chart. A tripwire doing its small, honest job. They arrived at my bedside in a choreography made to look like comfort. Mom Joran said near my ear, voice syruped for grief, "We'll take care of everything. You won't have to think about money again." Carla added, "It was the wind. You slipped. Just rest." The words clicked into the grooves they had practiced at the cliff, now polished for fluorescent light. Inez stepped in to silence a cheerful alarm and stayed to adjust a lead that didn't need adjusting. Joran lowered his voice further. "Once the bank clears the hold, I'll cover the hospital. Dad would want it simple." Inez's eyes flicked to mine. Message received, then back to the monitor. In her note, she wrote what mattered: family at bedside. Comments about finances, patient awake and following commands. Security appeared as policy, not drama. A man with a campus patch took a seat by the desk and read a clipboard like a novel. The charge nurse brought visitor policy forms. I asked that the unit retain a copy of the visitor list with times. "Of course," she said. "Routine is a rope you can hold when the story wriggles." Dr. Shore returned with results that were mercifully dull. No bleed. 2 right rib fractures. Non-displaced ulnar fracture. Knee contusion. Will admit you both overnight. I asked Inez for a pen. I did not sign anything. I drew a line across a blank page. On one side, the tale others were trying to set in my mouth. On the other, the record I would make with my own. Night thinned the hallway until machines had the floor. Somewhere a TV argued about weather. The monitor over my bed kept time I could trust. Near midnight, the charge nurse spoke gently. Visiting hours were over. Security would escort our son and his wife out. I thanked her for the policy. Policy is a kindness when kindness is a risk. When the unit finally settled, Inez half-closed the curtain and took my hand the way professionals do when the room is also a cliff. "So, tomorrow," she said, "if you want the right people in the room, I can help." I told her yes. I told her I had names times a Dashcam clip on a USB and a memory of a quartz line under sun. She wrote one sentence on a sticky note for morning contact social work. Request Adult Protective Services consult. Notify hospital risk. It was not loud, but it was a door. While radiology rolled me past the nurse's station, I said each name again so my mind would keep its footing. Kelsey on rope, Alvarez. The flight medic, Dr. Shore, nurse Inez. Saying names keeps strangers from becoming fog. Registration noted my request for a visitor log copy. Inez added one more line bank alert screenshot to be uploaded with personal effects. Small steps, strong spine. Before sleep took me in short-stitched pieces, I rehearsed tomorrow's first line, the one that would not shake. I will give a statement, not a story, not an argument. A statement. That difference would keep my feet where I set them. Monitors hummed. I matched my breath to their rise and let the room set the pace. Paper names time. Tomorrow I'd ask for social work, then a detective. Tonight, I'd keep still. Morning came measured by beeps and a soft rectangle of Colorado light. Inez checked my vitals and said the thing I needed. "The request you made last night is queued. A detective's on his way. I can find you a quiet space. Safety first, then purpose." I asked for a copy of the visitor log policy and a place where my pen could make clean lines. Security arrived with a clipboard and a small printer's worth of paper. Per policy, we retain visitor sign-ins for 7 years, he said, handing me a time-stamped printout, Joran 1906 to 2201, Carla 1905 to 2203. A nurse note sat behind it, Inez's tidy script family at bedside, statements regarding finances, patient alert. Detective Lenehan from the sheriff's office scanned the pages, nodded once, and had security seal them in a chain of custody envelope before he even sat down. Evidence first, conversation second. We moved to a small conference alcove carved out of the observation unit. No windows, 2 chairs, a table with coffee rings. I set my ledger down and opened to the first yellow tab, legal talk. Dates, phrases, names. Another tab in blue trip emails and gear lists, red trail wind edge. He photographed each page on a scene camera number tags in the corner, then slid a receipt for me to initial, hand steady pen, firm M. Barrow time date. Back in the room, Avery sat tall with the kind of tired posture carpenters get after carrying weight the length of a life. "You asked last night," he said to me first. Then to the detective, "I have a statement." He did not decorate it. He placed it on the table piece by piece a night decades ago, an argument near water and stone. A step that wasn't accident, and a choice he made afterward, what he told, what he didn't, and how the house bent around that silence. Lenehan didn't rush him. He marked times, mapped places, and let pauses stand. A triage tech knocked with a clear bag and a grin reserved for solvable problems. "Phones," she said. One screen spidered, both still boot. She explained a read-only copy tool the hospital uses when patients need to preserve messages for insurance or court. Consent forms, signatures, then cables clicked into ports. The progress bar crept like a careful hiker. When it finished, the tech tested playback on Avery's device. A file thunked into focus car cabin. Hum blinker clicks Carla's laugh too bright for morning. Then the trail approach. Her count 3, 2, and Joran's breath, right behind it. Gravel, wind, my small sound swallowed on impact. Later, under the ER's fluorescent drone, his whisper near my ear. "We'll take care of everything. You won't worry about money again." The tech stopped the clip, generated a verification hash, and burned a copy to an evidence disk. "Chain of custody starts here," she said, and logged the time. "Ranger station," I said next. Inez handed me the unit phone on speaker and a notepad. The admin on duty confirmed what I had hoped, that an entry camera covers the lobby and the hazard placard by the door. I gave our visit window, spelled our names, and asked how long footage lives before it cycles. 72 hours unless there's a preservation request, she said. This is me requesting the detective added, and sent an email while we were still on the line. Official letterhead case, number, exact time frame. The admin read the timestamp back to us and said she'd flag their IT. Lenehan returned the visitor prints, now stamped copies provided, and kept the originals sealed. He explained a simple boundary to hold the day intact, a no-contact advisement. Not a court order, he said, but I'm asking you not to engage. Hospital security will redirect them if they appear. Inez posted a discreet note at the nurse's station and slid an extra blanket over my feet the way mothers do when words would be too much. We debriefed without dressing the wounds. No confronting, I said. No performing. Avery nodded. Yes to answering questions with what we saw when we saw it and who stood where. He looked at the ring on my hand and smiled the smallest smile. You kept your line, he said. Now we move it forward. The detective stood. You've both done exactly what helps, he said. Paper, times, names. We'll pull the Ranger video process, the audio and interview staff. He left with envelopes that clicked when they touched, and a copy receipt I slid into the binder I will never keep in the safe again. When the room was ours, I took my pen and drew a short mark beneath yesterday's entry in the ledger. Not a flourish, not a signature. Just a quiet line to divide what we endured from what we would build. Beyond the curtain, a cart squeaked. A volunteer laughed with someone down the hall. The ordinary world crept back on padded shoes. I breathed with it. By noon, the light had shifted on the wall to a softer square. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, records received, footage preserved. The Ranger admin had followed through. I turned my ring once and closed my notebook. The line on the page had dried. It looked thin and strong. It looked like the start of a bridge. In the alcove's hush, I pictured the trail sign and Carla's fingertip on the warning icon, the way Joran's shadow slid when the wind swung. Facts, not fury. We would walk each one to a door with a badge and let the door stay open. Now. By late morning, the hospital felt like a courthouse without a gavel. Detective Lenehan returned with a folder and a calm that kept my heart from racing. He put his phone on speaker so we could all hear the Ranger admin. We pulled the entry camera, she said. It's clear your daughter-in-law points to the unstable edge sign as your group walks out. Timestamp is 10:43. I wrote the time the phrase points to hazard and my initials in the ledger, then underlined the page number. Quiet vindication feels. The detective laid our pieces out like lumber, my ledger tabs. Inez's note about their money talk, the visitor log, Darley's dashcam clip, the phone audio, now the ranger footage with a hash number printed below a seal. This is the probable cause packet, he said. I'm seeking arrest warrants and one search warrant for your garage. I answered with what has become my only speech. Thank you for documenting. He smiled. Documentation builds the rest. A judge came on the line through the district attorney's laptop. The detective swore his affidavit. The DA summarized. I heard phrases I had only read before attempted homicide overt act conspiracy. The judge asked 2 questions about time windows and locations, then signed electronically. Chain of custody envelopes numbered, I asked out of reflex. Numbered and logged, Lenehan said. The knot in my chest loosened half an inch. Evidence techs met him at our house while I stayed upstairs with a cup of broth and the binder across my knees. Inez hovered without hovering. The phone on my tray vibrated with photo receipts, a dynamic rope coiled in a plastic bin resin dust glittering on the tail, a hitch anchor with a fresh scuff line, a printed trail map with the spur circled in ink. A gloved hand held a ruler to a knot, another bagged swabs. Darley texted that she'd signed a supplementary statement about the midnight practice in... By late afternoon, deputies set a soft perimeter around the hospital entrances. Unmarked units idled near exits. Body cams clicked to life. I did not go downstairs. There was nothing for a mother to gain in watching a child meet a set of steel circles. Inez stood at my curtain and listened to her radio calm codes, the choreography of caution. They were carrying coffee when it happened. Detective Lenehan stepped from a pillar, identified himself, and read each of them their rights in a voice that made room for breath. Duran stared at the asphalt as if he could read a different ending there. Carla's mouth opened, then closed as the cuffs came forward. The clicks sounded like drawer pulls in our kitchen ordinary final. A deputy said clearly, "You are being recorded." Masks slipped faster outdoors. Duran's tone shot from concern to complaint. "You can't. They were dead." He froze on the last word as if he could pluck it back from the air. The body cam did not blink. Carla's face went flat, then sharp. "You said the spur was shorter," she hissed. "You picked the cliff," he snapped. The detective didn't argue. He only said voluntary statements are being recorded and guided them towards separate cars. Upstairs, the floor felt steadier than it had in days. Hospital security called to confirm both subjects were off property. Detective Lenehan came back long enough to hand me 2 receipts, one for the Ranger video transfer, one for evidence seized from the garage. Each line had numbers, times, initials. He explained next steps, booking intake the DA's review, and asked if I had questions. Only one. "Please ensure the house is locked when your team is done." "Already done," he said. "We changed the code and..." I did not ask to see either of them. I have seen enough. Instead, I signed a property safeguard form, sipped my broth, and breathed with the monitor until the beep and my pulse found a rhythm I recognized. Downstairs, doors opened and shut. Tires lifted gravel. The building swallowed the sound. Inez stepped in with a fresh blanket and a voice that had shepherded me from cliff to corridor. "Quiet for the night," she asked. "For now," I said. We stood in the small peace that follows a storm you did not start and could not stop, only outlast. Before he left the unit, the detective paused at the foot of my bed. "Mrs. Barrow, I know today was a lot." I nodded. "It was enough," I said. He tipped 2 fingers, then walked out with labeled bags, a laptop, and the kind of silence that means work is underway. I closed my ledger and drew a single line under the date, the same way I did yesterday. Not a flourish, a mark that says this chapter is recorded. The monitor replied with a steady tone. Out the window, the evening thinned into the kind of blue that forgives nothing and hides nothing. I turned my ring once and set my pen down. By the time the hallway lights dimmed, I had only one thought left to pin that truth, when built with small exact pieces, can stand without me holding it up. I lay back and let the paperwork hold. After he left, I opened the binder again and checked each tab like a pilot Dashcam Ranger audio garage bank. I wrote a sentence for myself, not for court. Do not gloat. Do not chase. Let records speak. I texted Janelle, "We're safe. Procedure is moving." She replied with a heart and proud of you for staying steady, Mom. Somewhere below my window, a siren faded toward town, and for the first time since the cliff, I felt sleep step nearer, then fear. Now. Morning brought paperwork and a phone that finally rang for the right reason. Deputy District Attorney Rowe spoke in the careful way people use when they know you've been holding your breath. "Counts are filed," she said. "Attempted murder conspiracy. We'll address financial crimes as discovery firms up. Arraignment this afternoon." I wrote the time in my ledger, squared the pen on the page, and told Avery we keep doing the next precise thing. A transport aide wheeled me out with my hospital band still snug on my wrist. The courthouse air had that dry Colorado smell, paper winter coats, coffee, and lobbies. I kept my breathing simple, 4 and 4 hold 4 out. In the elevator, Avery touched the arm of the chair, a steadying tap we've used since the kids were small. We didn't talk about outcomes. We talked about the ramp angle at the Justice Center and where the restroom was on the second floor. Practical beats panic. Judge Callahan took the bench calm as a lake. Joranne stood at one table with a public defender, Carla at another with hired counsel. Rights read, pleas not guilty. The judge set a no-contact order that put words to what my bones already knew. They could not come near us, our house, our phones, our mail. Surrender passports, GPS if bond posted. Acknowledged, their lawyers said. Avery and I said nothing. We didn't come for theater, we came for boundaries. Bail came fast, defense talked, accident community roots, and helpful adult children. Rowe answered with the ranger station footage, the driveway rehearsal, the hospital visitor logged the audio from the phone, and the attempted transfer that made my lock screen buzz in the ER. The judge set high bond and conditions tight enough to feel like seatbelts. The gavel tapped once. The room exhaled. Outside the courtroom, a caseworker from Human Services introduced herself as Rivera, young but seasoned in the eyes. "Your grandchildren," she said gently. "We can stabilize them today." We sat with her in a side office while she outlined emergency kinship placement background checks, already clean home check, tonight school pickup plans, tomorrow medical authority for routine needs, no parental contact without a court order. I signed our part of the safety plan and watched Avery sign his. Hope when it's handled by paperwork looks like a handrail you can trust while the stairs still shake. Back upstairs, Rowe walked us through an early look at discovery. Body cam clips from the parking lot arrests, export receipts from the ranger station, Inez's chart note, the visitor log, Darley's dashcam. Investigator Cho explained hashes and how each file would be verified again before trial. This wasn't TV, it was patient carpentry measure, twice mark straight, don't oversand the truth. Then the document examiner arrived, hale, gray-haired, precise. He laid 2 pages under a camera, a beneficiary change request, and a POA draft. He overlaid my genuine signature from the bank card form with the one on the change request. The slant, the pressure starts the exit strokes, they didn't match. The notary stamp bore a date that predated our appointment by 2 days. Hale's tone never rose. In my opinion, he said, "This is not your signature." Bank compliance emails in the folder showed the request pinging our bank the same hour Nurse Inez saw my phone light up the S20 alert that refused to be ignored. Rowe asked if we were up for one more item. I nodded. She pressed play on a short recording stamped with the jail's name. Joranne's voice flattened by a phone line. Same story. Wind. They were gone. A pause, then lower. Once funds clear. Counsel on their end cut in with a warning about recorded calls. The line clicked. Rowe stopped the file. Tampering talk, she said, and consciousness of guilt. We'll vet admissibility. I kept my face still and my pen moving date-time phrase page. Defense floated a feeler later, a reckless plea words meant to sand off edges until they looked like round pebbles. Roe didn't answer without us. "Your position?" she asked. I measured mine. "We will tell the truth," I said. "No bargains that erase it." Avery squeezed my shoulder. We weren't angry. We were exact. Late afternoon took us to the Human Services office. Ms. Rivera read the kinship placement again, slower this time, so I could hear the living in it bedtimes at our house lunch accounts at school. A note for the nurse about who can pick up counseling referrals standing by. We gave her spare keys. She promised the home check would be quick. "The kids have overnight bags," she said. "They packed photos." I swallowed once and managed, "We have frames." By the time evening flattened the light over Fort Collins, we were back in my room at the hospital waiting for discharge. Roe stopped by with one last folder discovery receipts, stamped and initialed. I ran a finger along the forged line on the copy Hale had marked, then set my finger on the grandparent placement form that Ms. Rivera had left for final signature. The same hand that a stranger tried to counterfeit made a clean, ordinary sound on paper. Ink. True and black. We rolled toward the elevators as the building settled into night. The Justice Center lights blinked in my mind like kitchen appliances going back to their quiet hum after a power surge. When we wheeled out into the parking lot, the air felt exact like a page without erasures. Avery said home check next. I said then backpacks on the hall tree. And in the soft space between those two sentences, I let myself breathe all the way down. Preliminary hearing days start with clocks and chairs. I woke before dawn, packed school forms for the kids on the hall tree, and let Avery tie my shoe because my ribs still argued with bending. At the Justice Center doors, I noted the seal, the flag, the time. I counted 4 breaths in, held 4, eased 4 out. We took the same back row as last time. I faced the bench, not the defense table. Calm is a skill. Detective Lenehan opened the state's story like a carpenter laying out Planck's timeline of the Hike Hospital, the arrests. He numbered exhibits, not emotions, visitor, log, nurse, note, audio, from a battered phone ranger station video dashcam from our neighbor's SUV, and the document analysis. My ledger got an evidence number too. He looked at me once, not for approval, but as if to say, we measured twice. Nurse Inez walked in with her badge, clipped straight. She told the court how she adjusted my monitor, how my phone buzzed with that bank alert, how Joran leaned in and whispered, "We'll take care of everything. You won't worry about money again." She anchored times to chart entries and the lock screen ping. Defense tried to paint concern over greed. Inez stayed with policy. What she saw, what she heard when she documented it. Clean lines carry weight. Roe cued the audio next. The courtroom heard gravel scrape wind, bite my breath, measured into the mask of stillness. Carla's voice, "It was the wind." Joran's reply, "We'll handle the money." The judge asked for the exact timestamps. The clerk marked them. No one said push. They didn't need to. We all heard geometry and intent the way a count to 3 becomes a plan when footsteps are behind you. A custodian of records from the park authenticated the ranger video. Hash values, export receipt preservation, hold all set. The screen showed the entry placard, unstable edge. Then Carla's finger, casual as a tour guide, touching the warning arrow as she turned to Joran. Defense objected to mind reading. The judge reminded them that today's question was probable cause, not verdict. Document examiner Hale set laminated sheets on the projector. He enlarged my true signature and the one on a beneficiary change. He traced pen lifts and entry strokes with a light pen. In my opinion, he said these were not written by the same hand. Bank compliance emails aligned the attempted change with the very minute the ER alert lit my phone. The forged line looked so tidy it almost read as kindness. Evidence says otherwise. Roe played a slice of the jail call. Joran's voice flattened by the system. Same story. Wind. They were gone. A beat later, once funds clear? Defense counsel winced at their own client's echo. The judge gave a limiting instruction about how the clip could be considered at this stage. I wrote the time on my notepad anyway. Dates steady the heart. Defense took their turn. Panic grief misunderstanding words like fabric softener meant to loosen edges. They asked Inez if alarms sometimes false trigger. She answered with charting protocol. They asked the detective if families often quarrel on hikes. He answered that quarrels don't usually include ropes tested on trailer hitches the night before. They brought up our age. I let the comment pass me like weather. When the judge ruled, the room made a small collective sound. Probable cause found on both counts, case bound over for trial, no contact maintained, status date set. The bailiff gathered the exhibits like careful dishes. We left without looking toward the cuffs or the eyes that used to ask us for rides to Little League. On the hallway bench, I breathed until my ribs stopped muttering. Ro sat for a minute, her folder on her knees. "This is the point where many people want to look back," she said softly. "You two looked forward instead." Avery smiled the way he does when a level bubble centers. Evening brought home the only verdict I needed for a night. 2 small backpacks hung under our coats. One held a science worksheet, the other a library book with a dinosaur sticker. I set lunchboxes for morning, then slid my ledger into the drawer beside the stove manuals. We ate soup at the oak table Henry made us years ago. After dishes, Avery checked doors. I checked the calendar. The house felt like a church after a choir has finished sound resting where it belongs. Before bed, I opened the ledger again, not to add more pain, but to give tomorrow a name. I drew a small, neat box and printed a single word inside it: custody. Then I closed. The book turned my ring once and let silence do the rest. During the brief recess, I walked the corridor once with a volunteer counting floor tiles to keep my steps even. I took both and wrote the time on my wrist with a pen she loaned me. Little anchors help sugar on the tongue numbers, on skin a stranger's kindness in a courthouse. Back inside, the judge clarified the protection order. No calls, no letters, no third-party messages. GPS passport, surrender, firearm conditions, the usual litany delivered in a voice meant to carry without cutting. I listened the way a nurse listens for a steady rhythm. No drama, only confirmation that the boundary now had a badge. When the clerk handed me a certified copy, I slid it into a plastic sleeve behind the children's school emergency cards. Safety belongs in one place. At home, after homework and showers, Avery read a chapter aloud while I filled out the field trip permission lines, contact numbers, allergies, who may pick up. I wrote my name with the careful pressure Hale had shown the court and smiled at the small honesty of a true signature. The children fell asleep quickly, worn out by ordinary life. Ordinary is a miracle when you've measured a cliff. I stood at the kitchen window for a long minute, looking past my reflection into the dark yard. Somewhere out there, the driveway still kept the faint scuffs only a trained eye would see. Inside, the refrigerator hummed and the wall clock clicked. I thought of all the elders who never make a ledger who trust, because trust built their houses. I wish them witnesses and pens and one good neighbor with a dashcam. We walked back into court with the same 2 rituals that have carried us this far. I count breaths. Avery checks the door hinges with a carpenter's glance. My ledger rode in my purse beside 2 folded school schedules. The flag, the seal, the clock. None of them know our names, which is a comfort. Judge Callahan asked if I wished to speak at sentencing. I nodded once. Silence can be a refuge, but today it needed a spine. I read 3 short paragraphs. I told the court what the fall took from our bones, a wrist, some sleep, and what it did not take from our home, our table, our vows, our duty to 2 children who still need breakfast at 7. I did not say hate. I ended with one line: paper and light preserved the truth. My voice did not shake. Avery's hand rested over mine, careful of the healing wrist, and we sat. Deputy District Attorney Rowe stood with the steadiness of someone who knows every mile marker on this road. She summarized the record: the Ranger camera catching a finger on the hazard sign, the Dashcam rehearsal by our driveway, the phone audio count shove script, the forged forms, the jail call about wind and funds. She asked for consecutive terms, lifetime no-contact restitution, and a financial order voiding any beneficiary changes born of fraud. She mentioned the children's stability plan with CPS already moving toward permanency. Joran asked to speak. He circled the old refrain win panic confusion, then slid where he always slides when no one is coaching him. They were all ready. He stopped and looked at the table. The judge lifted a hand, not unkindly. "You had rope maps and a script," she said. Carla's lawyer placed a palm on her sleeve before words could become evidence again. On the record, the accident story cracked like thin ice. Judge Callahan's sentence sounded measured, not angry. She called the act violent, planned, and tied to money. She spoke of public safety and deterrence of a parent's duty inverted into a weapon. She imposed long terms, barred contact with us and the children, and ordered restitution. Then she signed the financial order. Any beneficiary changes arising from forged signatures are void, and institutions are to restore status and flag attempts. It was the sound of a door closing in the right direction. In the hallway, the building hummed the same courthouse hum. It hums for strangers. Roe pressed certified copies into my hand. I wrote the date, the case number, and one word imposed on my notepad. Our pastor neighbor appeared like a soft coat in winter, handed us a thermos of tea, and said only, "I'm proud of your quiet." We thanked him, and he left before kindness could turn into ceremony. There was other work to do. At Human Services, caseworker Rivera reviewed checklists with the same calm cadence the judge used. Home check passed. School liaison assigned. Counseling referrals ready. She handed us the permanent kinship order guardianship finalized. Medical consent enrollment authority, a simple no-contact protocol for the children. I signed with my true hand. Avery signed beside me. We carried the folder like something alive and warm. An email pinged from Roe while we were still in Rivera's office. The court's financial order had already been transmitted to our bank and insurer. Compliance replied, holds placed forged forms, voided accounts coded to flag any related request. The document examiner's report attached to future civil remedies. I slid the printouts into a red folder labeled Kept. There is a rare peace that comes when paper admits the truth and agrees to keep it. We stopped at school pickup. 2 backpacks emerged, then 2 faces that checked our eyes the way birds check wind. The crossing guard called us by name and held traffic a beat longer than usual. A teacher tucked a permission slip into the smaller backpack and whispered, "Take your time. Small mercies keep the roof on." Evening leaned pink over the front range when we pulled into the driveway. Avery set a small carved bird on the porch rail, pine light enough for little hands. Dinner was grilled cheese and tomato soup with cold milk and an orange split 4 ways. The children did homework at the oak table Henry made. The pencil scratches sounded like rain. We paused for a photo of nothing special. Soup crayons, a chipped mug, all of it proof that a house can hold. When teeth were brushed and stories traded for sleep, I took the ledger from the drawer. I did not add a grievance. I drew a box around 3 words: home, safe, onward. Then I capped the pen. The house was quiet in the right way. The refrigerator hummed, the clock tick, the little sleep breath down the hall. Out on the porch, the carved bird pointed west toward mountains that will keep being mountains. I sat hands open to the cool and listened to what silence sounds like when it isn't fear. In the morning, there will be permission slips and lunch boxes and a counseling intake. A dentist appointment is circled on Thursday. The bird will still be on the rail. The bank will still reject bad signatures because a judge told it to. Somewhere in a file room, a chain of custody envelope will keep a Dashcam clip safe for as long as it matters. That is enough justice for tonight. On the porch, I whispered a promise I could keep meals, hot doors, latched papers, in order, stories told only when they help. The mountains kept their shape. So did we. Tomorrow would be ordinary on purpose. Yes,